Thanks, everyone, for staying with us. I'm Laura Ingraham, in for Bill O'Reilly. And in the Factor Follow-Up segment tonight, President Obama continues to beat the class warfare drum. And he tries to paint the GOP as the defenders of the wealthy. And last night, O'Reilly asked former President Clinton about the issue.
What's this class warfare business that Democrats are hoisting on the country? What is this? We didn't see that during your administration.
Well, you know, I don't look at it as class warfare. I think if you look at what's happened over the last 30 years, the middle class has lost ground. So I don't mind paying more taxes, but because I think I got the benefit of the tax cuts under President Bush and the benefit of being in the top 1%, so my income went up. But that won't solve the problem.
Joining us to analyze from Los Angeles is economist Ben Stein, and from New York is David Callahan, a senior fellow at Demos, is a progressive group. It's great to see both of you. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Let's start with you, Ben. You and I have been on round and round on this issue before, on taxes and what the wealthy should pay. But Obama, I think, is trying to shift the debate, and maybe he's being somewhat successful right now, right? He's not really talking about what he accomplished in 2.5 years. He's talking about what the Republicans are doing on Capitol Hill, or median income is not going up. But is this a successful strategy for growing us out of our economic decline right now?
Absolutely not. Class warfare is a very bad idea. Whipping up hatred towards the rich or towards any group in the country is a bad idea. And the simple fact is the middle class has suffered terribly, but the middle class has not suffered because the upper 1% have prospered. The middle class have suffered for a whole lot of reasons: competition with Far Eastern countries, lack of education, lack of proper skills. But it's not the rich people's fault that the middle class has suffered. And the idea that you can somehow blame the upper class and the wealthy for the problems of the middle class just doesn't make any sense. There's just no causal link there.
And David, an interesting statistic that I hadn't heard before, but Stephen Moore just shared it with me. In 2003, after the Bush tax cut, the big tax cut kicked in, for those next 4 years, the income coming into the federal treasury was the highest in any 4-year period in our government's history. So tax revenues went up after that tax cut. So the idea that only if we only raise taxes on the rich, things will begin to even out, and there'll be lollipops on the bushes and rainbows in the sky. I mean, it seems to me it doesn't really fly in the end.
Well, actually, Steve has that statistic wrong. As a percentage of GDP, taxes were lower under Bush than Clinton. They peaked in 2000 as 20% of GDP. But just going to Ben Stein's point, there is a causal connection between the pain of the middle class and how the rich are making out like bandits, which is that, we're seeing cuts for student aid, cuts for all sorts of social programs because there's not enough tax revenues. And one of the reasons there's not enough tax revenues is because taxes on the rich are the lowest level they've been in 60 years. Look, that is unsustainable.
Well, but sir, with great respect, Mr. Callahan, the rich are paying an ever greater percentage of total government taxes. The rich pay an astounding amount. It's the top 1% pays something on the order, very roughly, of 40% of total federal income tax revenue. That's not the problem. And student aid has grown phenomenally. It's just exploded in the last 10 years. Even under Bush, it just exploded. That's not the problem. The problem is the middle class faces intense competition from China in terms of manufacturers. There's a big gap in education. Americans are not getting as educated as they should. You cannot blame it on the rich. The rich are not going into middle class people's homes by night and taking away their money. They're not doing it.
And David, I'm not trying to pigpile on David here, but these are facts that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, it's not a political organization, studied. In just one example, in Wisconsin, for instance, we've seen a precipitous decline in the number of people covered under employer-sponsored health insurance, right? A lot of those are small businesses. We're talking about hurting the middle class. Well, just one policy that was really pushed by President Obama, which of course is health care reform, has resulted in fewer people in the middle class having the insurance that they were promised they could continue to have, because small businesses are struggling during the Obama years. I mean, they struggled before, but they're really struggling now. So that's also hurting the middle class.
Well, that Obama program isn't even going to affect fully until
the taxes haven't gone into effect. In 2013, we're going to start seeing the taxes.
But let's go back to the class warfare issue. I would agree with what Warren Buffett said, which is, yeah, there's class warfare in this country. It's been waged from the top. down. You know, politics is about who gets what, and we all know that the way to get what you want in politics is to hire lobbyists and make campaign donations, and the wealthy have the money to do that. They have taken over our politics. The middle class don't have the means to compete. We see all this money for lobbying, all this money for campaign donations, and it shouldn't be a surprise that there's all these loopholes in the tax code, and that a lot of corporations pay no taxes, that a lot of wealthy people pay no taxes. There was a study recently released that found a quarter of all millionaires paid lower taxes than your typical middle class family. That is not right.
Sir, Mr. Callahan, with great respect, the overwhelming majority of millionaire contributions go to the Democrats. 90% in the last presidential election, 90% of the $1 million and up contributions
I think both
went to
parties
the Democrats.
have been complicit.
Overwhelmingly.
Both parties have been
wealthy in this
complicit in
country
this
are
top-down
overwhelmingly
class
Democratic contributors. The wealthy are overwhelmingly Democrats.
I think we should also remember that about, I think, 2/3, 3/4 of the upper income people above $1 million, those are business owners and investors, right? What happens to them ultimately also ends up trickling down to the middle class in the United States.
Look at those hedge fund guys paying 15% of their income.
What if they played 90%? But what if they paid 90%? Would that solve our economic problems? Would that create manufacturing jobs in the United States? If all of them paid 90%, let me tell you what it would accomplish. Zero.
Well, they shouldn't
Washington
be paying,
would spend the money. That's what we know. We appreciate it. We're out of time. Ben and David, thanks so much.